So we wanted to take a pause and do a video just about our characters.
They've cut me off. Wait, maintenance, we'll be right back. Right, loading, please wait.
Stay right there.
All right.
I still need some sound.
Got it.
Right.
Hold on a minute. Wrong intro. How does it go? That one. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I never get to school, mama, happy. Always burn a hole in my pants. I don't think the lids out of me. Always blew a second chance. I need a love to keep me happy.
Okay, you are more than welcome to start off by pausing and reading our 12 rules of reading biblical text. And if you don't like the 12 rules, well, this isn't the place for you. If you don't understand the 12 rules, go listen to the audiobook that is uploaded on this channel because I don't have time to go over it every time. It's our Bible study series that go pretty in depth. Warning, we're not language watching people. We're very salt of the earth, down to earth. It also does not follow the politically correct patterns of modern preachers and teachers. So if you're looking for that, also definitely not the place for you. And the reason why we use modern characters is we're pulling their energy, if you will, or their, their personality traits and modernizing these biblical characters so that it sort of sticks in your head better, right? And you can kind of understand what was going back way as we step way back into ancient times. So let's get to it. The first one that you probably see most often is our King David character. And he's the first in our cast of characters. And Negan, we chose Negan for King David because he's really a pissant warlord. And he's a controversial figure, but you're sort of, mainstream Christian people don't like him, right? Because he went after the group who were dominating the show. And so, he's seen as the bad guy. But, well, he's loyal, right? He takes care of his people, who would be the people in covenant in the biblical story. And he's really loyal, and he's got reasons for what he does, and he may not always do it correctly. He's not sinless, and certainly neither is David. But David is really the covenant enforcer. And like it or not, okay, he carries the Abrahamic covenant and the House of David covenant. All of these things are carried through the patriarchal bloodline of David, right? And he's super powerful. The House of David is super powerful. But he's a little pissed off because he's also ignored. Now, the Jews claim David late in the game. And what I mean by that is your modern Jewish population hearkens themselves to David. But there's a problem. There's a big problem with that. That's the result of modern political narratives. And we're just going to leave it at that without going down that rabbit hole. But if you actually look at the history throughout the Bible and like the order of the Bible and the chronology of the Bible, there's some problems with that claim. The first one is Jews, quote unquote, that word, Jew, didn't exist. That group of people who called themselves Jews in biblical times. They didn't exist until 500 BC. They were the group of people, the elites, ding, 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 the elite politicians and priesthoods were taken off to Babylon. Now, by the time they were taken to Babylon in the 500s, Israel, the sons of Jacob, all 12 tribes, 10 of them were already gone into the world and assimilated, and they became the Gentiles. How is Israel Gentiles? Well, Israel, your 10 tribes from the northern kingdom, are the Gentiles. So when they're talking to Gentiles, they're talking to Israel because they're lost and they're assimilated out into the population. Okay. We also have pagans who did not come from Jacob, and they're out in the world. And that's who the Israelites mixed with to become the Gentiles. So you've got to remember, it's not just Jew versus pagan Gentiles. Lost Israel is mixed in there with the Gentiles, and we forget that key fact because the Jews came in and claimed everything. And we go back to David. Well, maybe somehow a few of you original sons of Judah do. But that's not the Babylonian priesthood, guy from the 500s. Those are different people with mixed bloodlines themselves, jankified in there with Esau, in the Herods, in the whole, I mean, it's a thing, guys. They went off to Babylon. But interestingly, and were influenced by the Babylonian religion and their gods and all the baby eaters over there with Nimrod, New World Order, ding, ding, ding. But interestingly, they didn't return from Babylon. They returned from Persia because while they were gone, Persia conquered everybody, including Babylon. So they were actually sent back by Persia. And here's the thing that people forget. Persia was a very administrative society. They were all about laws and rules. And when they sent the elite politicians and priesthoods back generations later, okay, they said, control the people, but you can't have a king because we're the king. And you're just like this little vassal side state of ours. And we're not going to send you back unless you control the people on our behalf. And this is where you get the rise of the Babylonian Pharisees, or I would even say the Persian Pharisees, because they're enacting the legal system like the Persians do. Okay, this is where you're getting all the legal-based nonsense that Jesus fought against. Okay, those legal nonsense people from Babylon and Persia, those are the Jews. David wasn't a Jew, okay? David wasn't a Jew. And we forget that because of modern labels. That whole thing gets washed over. And go to the book. In that time, that's when our legal system got rewritten. They put a whole bunch of janky stuff in there, and they're like, yeah, Moses said so. So don't fall into the trap. Be really careful as to which quote-unquote laws you're going to follow, because that's just chasing Judah, right? And all the Persian elites in their administrative system, they literally wrote shit into the Bible, corrupted it with their laws in order to control the people. So when they come back and say, we're David, David's like, and that's Sophia's, motherfuckers. People are forgetting that giant piece of history, of quote unquote Jewish history. So that's the first one. But David's not just pissed off at the Jews. David's also pissed off at the Christians because they don't claim David at all. They actually erase David's entire patriarchal bloodline. So if David's holding the covenants to pass down through the patriarchs to get to King Jesus the Messiah, and you take his bloodline out and replace it with magical sperm, David's like, what the fuck? So David's pissed off at the Christians and their magical sperm too, because that means the covenants don't go through the mother. The covenants go through the father. So the Jews are claiming him, but the Jews weren't even in existence when David was around. The Christians erase him. So David is pissed at everybody. David is pissed at everyone, and he's our covenant enforcer. So he's got his bat in his hand or his slingshot. He's in war mode. he's going to come and smash through all of this theological nonsense, because his job is to be the enforcer in the spiritual realm and keep those covenants straight. So you don't want to mess with the house of David, the real house of David, which is the reunited 12 tribes that were before Jews came along and jankified it with their Babylonian Persian crap. And they also, not only did they write those janky laws in, they also redid the genealogies to put themselves connected to David. So basically what they did is they're like, okay, well, we're Judah. All of Israel's gone already. Like 200 years ago, Israel's gone. So there's really no one around to complain. So since we've got to control these people on behalf of the Persians, what we're going to do is we're going to connect Judah to David. Because unless we claim David, we can't control these people. So they did the book of Chronicles. They assembled the quote unquote Old Testament. They wrote a bunch of jank shit in. They fucked with the genealogies and they put it out there. So there's a lot of corruptions going on in the Old Testament from that quote unquote Second Temple period, when Babylon, Persia elites come back and start to control everything. So you have to remember that piece. And that's what Jesus was fighting, because he went all the way back to David, which is before the Jews. Okay, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That was way too fast. That's why we chose David, because he's pissed at everybody. And his energy is, y'all are going to rewrite my lineage, whether Christians or Jews? That's too bad. I don't care what your modern theology nonsense says. I'm the covenant bearer. So you better watch out. That's David. That's David. And David would be thrown out of any church today. If David came waltzing into your church, those Christians would hate David. They would never accept David. He's gritty. He's honest. He's a piss out warlord. They'd be like, who's this guy? No. He does not fit with the hippie magical sperm Jesus that they worship. So they don't like David, but he pops in and knock, knock every once in a while. All right, our next one. Who is our next one? Our next one. Poor Ephraim. Oh gosh, this is Ephraim. Ephraim is Keith Richards, and most Christians don't even know the word Ephraim, never mind who it is. And the son, the tribe, the legacy, and the history. And that makes sense when you read Hosea. And by the way, back here with David, remember Jeremiah. If you don't believe me that this has been corrupted, go read Jeremiah 7 and tell me what the heck he was talking about with the lying pen of the scribes. And once you understand that the scribes are like legal secretaries that work in with the Pharisees, please tell me what he was talking about. If he wasn't talking about the elites in the Second Temple period corrupting the books and rewriting the narrative and the genealogy. Let me tell you, if Herod knew that genealogy, he would have went straight after the Messiah and knocked it out immediately. Herod didn't know the genealogy of the true sons of David. Otherwise, he would have wiped them out. Okay? So don't tell me that the quote-unquote genealogies in the Old Testament are accurate, because Herod would have followed those right to Jesus, and he didn't, because he couldn't. So he just tried to kill everybody because he didn't know the genealogy, because they screwed it up, tied themselves to David by making David Judah. No. David was sons of Rachel holding those covenants. But anyway, I digress. That's all in the book and Meet Ephraim series, and probably come up in our Meet David. So we talk about that a lot. All right. So now on to Ephraim. So then who is Ephraim? Well, when David got erased by these major religions, so did Ephraim. Everybody forgets that Ephraim is the firstborn son carrying those covenants. He got the Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 48. So he's our firstborn, but he's our reluctant firstborn. He's sort of a leader by accident, if you will. And he's got some Moabite blood in there. He's got a very wild and chaotic past. He kind of likes that pagan hoochie, loves to party. Ephraim probably shouldn't be in charge, okay? But somehow he is. He leads the band. All right. I kind of think of him as God's firstborn dipshit. He's also, in the end times harvest cycles, Ephraim's the one who gets called out first. And he's being called out of the religious systems. And he's the leader, right? And even though he's kind of a dumbass, he's drunk with pride, he rubs egg on the face of the priestly elites. Because Ephraim will pop in with his guitar and start singing, and you're like, oh, what about this? And he makes the priestly liars in the pulpit look like fools. You would think he's the fool, but he's actually really smart when you listen to him. But nobody listens to him. Everyone follows him, but nobody listens. It's a very strange dynamic with Ephraim, the faces of Ephraim. But he ends up being the leader tribe of the northern kingdoms. And they're kicked out of the land for partying too hard and chasing pagan hoochie out into the world. And then you look at Hosea and they forget who they are. They don't know their God because they've been so integrated out in the world that they have no idea who the real God is, never mind the covenants that they have. Their whole identity has been erased and stolen and usurped from them. And they're not really sure about anything because, well, they're out there partying and they're sort of forgetful dumbasses. So there you go. But he's supposed to be the leader of the northern tribes. And in the and harvest cycle, they get called out to come back. And what that means is not back to some Rothschild land. It means they're called out to come back under the covenants that they carry within that reunited house of David. So they're sort of, in a really messy, ridiculous way, stumbling through this covenant thing, trying to figure themselves out. And even his gray hairs are on his head. He's been gone so long, but yet he doesn't return. Like, that's Ephraim. They're sort of rambling and chaotic and messy, but underneath this babbling mess, they really nail it when it counts because they're a genius, truly. They're genius. Wealthy, prideful, all that stuff. Eccentric, that's Ephraim energy. So, the Ephraim energy that we kind of attach to Keith Richards is sort of, dude, I nearly died 12 times, but still pulled off being the leader. That's the covenant. That's the covenant momentum you got going. All right. Then we have, who else do we have? All right. This is Oz. This is Osmekiel. Osmekiel is a earthly dead human saint alive in the kingdom of God, which is unfolding as we speak. It's not a one-time event at the end. It's constantly unfolding. So he's up there in this big hierarchy, right? God has a governmental system. God has a legal system. God has lots of different kinds of entities. It's not just angels and demons. There's all these different subcategories on the good team and the bad team. And the good team is organized into this hierarchical and legal structure. So Oz is up there trying to work on the good team of God and do his job and fill his role. And he's sort of the watchman of Ephraim, which is the northern tribes. He's one of their watchmen. And so he's looking down going, oh, shit, what do we do with these dumbasses? And so he's working just behind the veil. Okay. Human, dead on earth, but fully alive in the kingdom as a testament to the reality of that supernatural world. And he can't step out of bounds and just tell you the answer. He's got to make you dig. Jesus says, if you love me, you will obey me, you'll follow my commandments, and you're going to dig. So Oz is kind of, dropping clues that's kind of leading those crumbs where, and it confuses us because we're like, what the hell's that mean? And then we go digging, and then it leads to this big giant rabbit hole. So that's kind of Oz's role. And he's sort of the Tony Stark / Sherlock RDJ characters. He's extraordinarily snarky and really funny, actually. And he is dropping clues, warnings, and revelations. He's frustrating. He's a genius. He actually does know the answers, but he won't and I argue can't just spoon feed them to you. He cannot interfere with free will, cannot interfere with free choice, cannot do divination, quote unquote. He's got to walk this real fine line, keeping his role in that covenant in the kingdom, but on the spiritual side of the kingdom, by saying, okay, I can't really tell you the answer, but we're going to drop this crumb and let you go find it. That's what he does. And he's really annoyed because humans here on earth are really fucking stupid. And so we go on this whirly bird trail. And he's like, if you just would have listened and did that first, but no, you had to run off and do that first. And now look at the mess that we're in. That's how Speckle. So he's frustrated and frustrating. And his energy is pretty much, I can just tell you guys what exactly is wrong and what the answer is. But watching y'all figure out is what we have to do up here. And it's honestly a lot more fun. So we got you. Once you're in covenant, once you are in the covenant, your spiritual army, right? Your guardian angels, your spiritual army, the ones who protect you, the saints and spirits that are giving you messages, they've got your back. Like, God's not going to let you go, right? Team Jesus has got you. But it's not all like a bunch of angels sitting on a cloud with halos on their head. Like, these are actual, characters with their own personality, their own rules of governance, things they can and can't do. Whenever we're doing a clearing and like throwing out growlers from someone's home or energy or space, and we have to clear it from the growlers, he's got to go and get warrants. He's got to go to court. He's got to do all kinds of stuff to put things in place in this legal system to make it happen, right? You can't just walk around out of covenant doing whatever the hell you want and be like, hey, go throw this demon out because I said so. Well, just say Jesus Christ and you're fine. Like, that doesn't work. Like, there's an actual system. And that system gets revealed to you when you start to understand the hierarchy and the legal systems and all the legal language going throughout the Bible, and how covenant is the move that changes the game. And that covenant, that's why baptism is so important. Baptism is like, if you're Trinitarian baptizing, you're putting people under a false authority with the magical non-David Jesus, the magical sperm Jesus. You're under a false authority. But you correct that false authority and come into a covenant house of David baptism, like everybody does in Acts, right? We talk about this in the baptism series. Well, now you're in covenant. And as long as you're obeying the laws of that covenant, that's where wisdom gets unfolded to you. More and more and more support, protection, wisdom, all that comes into play when you're in the covenant. If you're out of covenant, I don't care how much you run around saying, I'm covered in grace. Yeah, you're not in covenant. Sorry, not sorry. It's just how it is. It may feel good. It may have nice, perfect little words in this perfect little imaginary world you've built, but that's not what the Bible says. That's not the covenant. That's not Team Jesus. Team Jesus is a whole bunch of badass characters, and we need to understand that. And so that's who Oz is. Who do we have next? Oh gosh. Okay, here we go. We've got Hunter Biden as Saul of Tarsus. This is the wealthy, politically connected, pagan, Gentile, master manipulator, Jewish Pharisee. So he's just everything. He's Rome, he's Jewish, he's Pharisee, he's Gentile, he lives in Turkey, he's pagan. Like he's got all these political connections. He's a Herodian. And when I say Herodian, I don't mean bloodline Herodian necessarily. He could be, I don't know. But Herodian was also a political party. Okay? Herodian was like Antifa, political party. So this is a very, very, very wealthy, well-connected dude, but he's an asshole. He's a manipulator. He's duplicitous. So this is your half-truth specialist. What he does is he takes pagan concepts, slaps Jesus's name onto them, and calls it It was revealed to me on the road to Damascus. But meanwhile, he's over there talking to the Jewish Pharisees, getting them all pissed off and riled up. So the two groups fight against each other. Okay. This guy is a covenant bypass expert. He will lead you in every direction, anywhere you want to go, whatever you want to believe. He's got verses for you. He's going to lead you whichever way you want to go, except the covenant. He's got every possible way over it, under it, around it, to the side of it. But he's not taking you into covenant in the house of David. That's not where he's leading people. So whether Southern Kingdom or Northern Kingdom, lost sheep, he's not bringing them back into the covenant. Those Gentile lost sheep, they're not of Israel. He's not leading them to covenant. He's not leading the Pharisees to covenant. He's not leading the pagans to covenant. He's leading every single group of people out of the covenant. And he's doing it with his ridiculous word salad. So one of the ways he does this, and the biggest way that impacted my life supernaturally, and since I was a child, is he teaches that idolatry is fine. He erases bloodlines and he rebrands theology. He's the first place we see the Logos entity pop up when he makes Jesus the creator. And I don't remember if that's in Corinthians or Colossians, but he makes Jesus the creator. You will hear evangelical preachers out there right now saying Jesus is the creator because they're going with this Logos entity, which is a Greek, Hellenized, Jewish philosophy that goes all the way back. And we'll get there when we get to our Trinity series. But he's the guy that slipped that Logos in, that caused the really shitty translators to capitalize the L in the book of John, which is not grammatically correct at all. But we'll prove that grammatically in the Greek later on. But that's what he does. He erases bloodlines. Doesn't matter which bloodline is. He rebrands theology. And then he tells you, go ahead and eat the demon meat. Make those demon covenants. No problem. Make those tableship covenants by eating the meat. So he's very dangerous. But also, if you're willing to look through the mess and you're ballsy enough to take him head on, he falls apart very quickly. And his energy is, you want to eat that idol meat? Go ahead. Make those covenants. Those tableship covenants with those demons. Your conscience will handle it. Or not. That's Paul the Apostle. All right, who's next? Oh, this guy. This is Judah, the master manipulator. This guy is wicked. He's respected, though, for some reason. Everybody mainstream just loves Judah. They trust Judah. They're waiting for the lion of the tribe of Judah. Mainstream Christianity is going to chase Judah right off a cliff because of Revelation 5:5, which is also a Greek grammar problem. And we break that down 100 times. Go find that. We've got plenty of videos on that. And so everyone's chasing Judah and waiting for this Messiah of Judah. But the whole thing's built on deception. He's greedy and calculating. He sold Joseph, secured his own power, but played it off as being righteous. He completely controls the narrative. He makes himself look like the rightful heir, even while he's twisting those covenant lines and boundaries. He also moves in the shadows. He's never the loudest, but he's always pulling the strings behind the scenes. Welcome to Judah. Here's the energy. Chaos is a ladder, and Judah climbs that ladder of power better than anyone. He shifts his alliances, mixes his bloodlines, changes his political side, secures his power, and he makes sure you never suspect his next move. That's Judah. But somehow, all of Christianity is following this guy. You know, they've got a wake-up call coming to them. All right, moving along. We've got Joseph. Joseph is long forgotten in the dustbin of history. Nobody talks about Joseph anymore. But in his day, boy, was Joseph the guy. He's got his trench coat, very much like Humphrey Bogart's got his trench coat, just like Joseph has his coat, his magical coat, special coat given to him from Jacob. And because he's so forgotten and lost into the dustbin of history, he's our shadow player. He works inside enemy territory with those Egyptians. But what he's really doing during his time in Egypt, he's maneuvering that covenant right into position because it falls into the hands of Ephraim when Jacob blesses them in Genesis 48. So although they're in a foreign land, Gentiles, I'm talking to you, Israel Gentiles, although they're off in a foreign land, he never forgot his God. And he's actually carrying that covenant. And Jacob kind of skipped Joseph and went down to Ephraim and gave him that Abrahamic covenant. And then that tribe comes out and becomes the leader of all 10 tribes in the north. That's how Ephraim and Joseph are connected. So he's doing power plays with subtlety. He doesn't scream about covenant and birthright, but he's got a double portion blessing. And boy, does he implement it behind the scenes. So the energy of Joseph is this quiet, forgotten power. He's like, I'll sell grain. I'll build empires. I'm going to win through strategy, not brute force or master manipulation. That's Joseph. That's Joseph energy. All right, then we have James. Now, in our original private, all of these series are from a private Bible study group, which is why we're so casual. We were just doing this as a small group of us. And then we decided to just make them public, and whoever wants to listen or not is welcome to listen or not. So we had a different character for James in our slide deck, but that character is a person, like not that these celebrities aren't people, but he's not a famous person. He's just a dude that I know, that I met in my world travels. And when I think of this guy, I think of James, sort of a badass out in the desert, if you will. And I didn't want to use his picture because, you know, you don't want to use pictures of common folk for something like this. So what we did instead is we used, instead of someone we personally know, we just replaced him with Bruce Willis. We did. Because, you know, James's job is to navigate the new quote unquote church, standing in the middle of your Babylonian, Persian, Pharisee Jews. You've got all these different sects. You've got the Zealots. You've got the House of David. You've got all these priests. You've got the Herods. You've got Rome coming in. You've got the Greek Hellenists. Like, you've got all of these factions of people and all of this different weird thinking that has bled into the culture from the Persians, from the Babylonians, from the Greeks, from the Egyptians. Like, we've got a lot of shit. We've got a mess. We've got a mess. And this mess was put into James's lap to steer the ship straight through the mess. Okay? That's why we chose Bruce Willis, because he's a badass, but he's also walking a political tightrope. Everybody ignores him. Nobody likes him. They constantly misrepresent what he's about and what he's saying. So he's sort of our no BS badass. He's a straight shooter. He is loyal. The system doesn't like him. Well, the system doesn't like James either. Because James, when James shows up, shit just seems to get straightened out. Nobody likes him. But when he shows up on the scene, he's the only one taking care of shit and making sure things stay on track. That's James. So he's our straight shooter. He doesn't waste words. He doesn't dance around the truth. He cuts through the bullshit. And while Christians are over here philosophizing, James just smacks them back right into covenant obedience. James is like the cool story. What about this? Oh, great idea. What about that? Like James is sort of like, he's the monkey wrench in their system, if you will. That's James. James is absolutely the monkey wrench in their whole system of bullshit. That's James. His energy is, you guys are complicating this. No, just shut up, stop whining, do what's right, get back on the mission. Let's get this shit handled. That's James, standing in the middle of a mess, but somehow clearing it up. Huge job did James have on his shoulders. And everybody ignores James or misrepresents him. All right. Then we've got these guys. I lived in Saudi. And these guys, you'd have them around Egypt sometimes, some places, you have them around Saudi. But these were the religious police. Now, these guys are your legal enforcers. They're not there anymore. They threw them out with the Muslim Brotherhood. They listed all of their power dissolved. But at one point, before MBS took power, these guys are running all over Saudi. And Americans still think of Saudi as Saudi under these guys, under this factional party. It's not like that anymore. Saudi is not like this anymore because these guys are gone. Okay. So all that legalistic nonsense that people have in their head when you say Saudi Arabia, like, oh my gosh, Americans, they're still thinking about these guys, even though they've been gone for almost 10 years now, I guess. But they were the legal enforcers. They were called the religious police. And they would run around and like, your abaya is not long enough. It's 1.5 inches short. We're going to arrest you. So they're running around arresting people and cutting off fucking hands and doing all kinds of crazy shit. Because the law. They weren't spiritual leaders. They policed everybody's daily life. They're enforcing dress codes, what time prayer time is, social behavior, all that kind of fake, phony power structure stuff, rather than actual covenant principles. Sharia law, quote unquote, gets attributed to these guys. But these guys aren't Sharia law. Just like Pharisee law gets attributed to God's law. No. Sharia law would be like the Torah law, the concept, the spiritual piece of Muslims and Islam. Okay? That, Jesus is teaching. But Pharisee law that came in under Babylonian Persian elites that corrupted the books, lying pen of the scribes, Jeremiah, and wrote in all of this legalistic nonsense so they could have control of the people. That's these guys, okay? They were feared, but not respected. People avoided them. If you saw them coming around the street, you scooted into a store, friend, right? Like, you didn't want to be around it. Because no one actually gave a shit and followed them unless they were forced to. I mean, I can't say nobody. Like, there were people, who like totally believed in this system. But like your commoner walking around, they're like, oh shit, here they come. They were like your hall monitors in high school, right? Where you're like, oh fuck, put out the fucking cigarette. Here comes the hall monitors telling you you're late to class again. That was the dynamic. Okay. It wasn't all just everybody followed these guys and respected them, but they were forced to, or else. And the or else was really fucking scary. So this was a regime based on fear, very legalistic, fearful, forcing you, just like the Pharisees. Okay, so this is sort of a modern example of that. It was hypocrisy over holiness. They claimed this moral authority, but they focused on petty rules while ignoring real corruption. They had this tattletale mentality, like the hall monitor, where they kind of lurked in the corners and they stood there with their arms folded, staring you down. And they were just waiting to fill out all their little reports of your violations rather than actually guiding people into righteousness. And like I said, they were stripped of power, all their power, when MBS took over out in Saudi. And they lost that authority in 2016. And they lost authority fast. Like when they crumbled quickly. And all that does is it just proves that they were never respected to begin with. They were just tolerated out of fear. Okay. So I want you to think they're long gone now, but the fear of these guys still exists in American brains because they've never been to Saudi and they have no fucking idea what they're talking about. So like, oh, Sharia law, these guys, they're bad. They're going to cut your head off. Like, it's not like that anymore. And it hasn't been like that for almost 10 years. But Americans still don't know because that's the legacy that they left behind. Just like Christians don't know that all the quote unquote law written in by the Babylonian elites and the Pharisees wasn't God's law to begin with. It's just these assholes saying, God said so. It's the same thing. Moses said so. That's how the Second Temple Jews controlled the population. So now it's going to go, oh, that's why Jesus came and fought the quote unquote Jews. Jesus, the Jew, fought the other Jews to go back to the David Jews. No, take out the word Jew, right? It's not biblical. Not every single person was a Jew. So Jesus of Galilee, right? The tribe of David, the Ephrathites in Judah, not of the tribe of Judah, right? Location, not bloodline, comes in and fights the Babylonian Persian Pharisees who jankified the books that Jeremiah called out and says, lying pen of the scribes. And Jesus is like, let me straighten this shit out. Jesus was fighting these guys, saying, this is God's law. And by the way, I know because I go all the way back to David. I go all the way back to Moses. He's battling this corruption that came in with the Babylonian Persian elites, also called Jews, who claim everything. They claim David. They claim Abrahamic covenant. They claim everything because if they didn't, they made David Judah to say, we have this power and authority. Otherwise, the people wouldn't have listened to them to begin with. So I want you to think of Pharisees in this context in a modern way, and you're really going to kind of start to see how these dynamics work. So their energy is sort of that, you think you're enforcing righteousness, but all you guys did was make people hide their real life, come to God in a very inauthentic way if they came to him at all. While you all played morality police. Remember when Jesus says, you're not leading anyone to God. Not only do you not know God, you're of your father, the devil. Not only do you not know God, but you're stopping other people from finding him too, you dipshits. That's Pharisee. So that's who these guys are. And I think that'll make a lot of sense in Western Christian minds. So those are our Pharisees. And with that,
Hey, bless you. Gold rings on you.
we'll see you guys next time.